looked at how to multiply whole numbers and fractions. Now we're going to learn how to multiply decimals. And multiplying decimals is important because, as you know, dollars and cents involve decimals. Okay, let's take a look at an example. Reed bought 1 pounds of green beans. The green beans cost $1.27 per pound. What was the total cost of Reed's green beans? Now, to solve this exercise, we need to multiply the cost per pound times the pounds of green beans. Let's bring in our factors. $1.27, and then our pounds was 1 8/10. Now, when we multiply decimals, we actually multiply them the same way we multiply whole numbers. So we won't worry about the decimal until we get our product. So 8 times 7 is 56. Write the 5 there. 8 times 2 is 16, and 5, that's 21. 8 times 1 is 8, and 2, that gives us 10. Next, we have 1 times 7, which is 7, 1 times 2, which is 2, and 1 times 1, which is 1. Oh, I almost forgot my placeholder. Let's go ahead and add now. 6 plus 0 is 6, 1 plus 7 is 8, 0 plus 2 is 2, and 1 plus 1 is 2. There we have our product. Like I said, now we're going to bring in the decimal. And the way you figure out the decimal is by looking at the decimal places in your factors. Now, our first factor has 2 decimal places, 1, 2, and the second one has 1 decimal place. What we want to do now is add those decimal places, so 2 plus 1 is 3, and therefore our product has 3 decimal places. That's 1, 2, 3. Now, this answer looks a little strange, and the reason it looks a little strange is because we're dealing with money. So if we're dealing with money, that means we need to round to the nearest hundreds. Here's our hundreds place. We have an 8. If you look at the number on the right, it's a 6, which means we round up. So we have $2.29. And there you have it. The total cost of Reed's green beans is $2.29. So you see, multiplying decimals can be delicious and lucrative. See you next time. Let's do another example that involves multiplying decimals. This time we're going to take a look at an example involving my friend Jessica. Jessica's hair grows at a rate of 1 200 centimeters per month. If her hair continues to grow at this rate, how much will her hair grow in 9 2500 months? Now remember, we said before that multiplying decimals is just like multiplying whole numbers. You just have to be careful where you place the decimal. Let's go ahead and bring in our factors. We have 1.02 times 9.25. 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 0 is 0, and 1 is 1. 5 times 1 is 5. Don't forget your placeholder now that we're moving on to the next row. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 0 is 0. And 2 times 1 is 2. And something to note, I'm gonna remove this one here because we don't want to get confused with the other numbers that we have to place up there. So we want to get rid of that one. Okay, let's continue. Finally, we have the 9 that we have to multiply. And now we need 2 placeholders and make sure we write the rest of our numbers in the correct places. 9 times 2 is 18. We write a 1 here. 9 times 0 is 0, and 1 is 1. And 9 times 1 is 9. And we are ready to add. 0 and all these zeros makes 0. 4 plus 1 and 0 is 5. 5 plus 0 and 8 is 13. 1 plus 2 plus 1 is 4. And finally, we have 9. Let's look at the decimal places now. Our factors, our first factor, notice where the decimal place is. 2 decimal places. The next one is also 1, 2. 2 decimal places. So we add how many decimal places our factors have. That's 2 plus 2 is 4 decimal places. Now we know that our product, now we know where our product has its decimal place, and that is in the 4 decimal place. 1, 2, 3, 4, right here. Okay, great. Now notice that we have a 0 at the end of our decimal. We can actually drop that 0, and this decimal here is equivalent to 9 435 thousandths. And let's write our units in, because it's very important to write them. Now, let's think about whether our answer makes sense. Well, a good way to check is to round our factors. Let's round the factor 1.02. That rounds to 1. And the factor 9.25 rounds to 9. If we multiply those rounded factors, we get 9 times 1 is 9. So we know our answer has to be close to 9. In fact, closer to 9 than 10. And look at this. Our answer is close to 9, so we know we are correct. So with that being said, how much would Jessica's hair grow in 9 2/25 months? Well, Jessica's hair will grow 9 435 thousandths centimeters. Okay, so multiplying decimals is great. It's not too different from multiplying whole numbers. You just have to be careful about where you place your decimal point. Good luck with decimals, and see you soon. Decimals are great. We know how to add them, subtract them. We even know how to multiply them. Let's take it one step further and divide decimals. Here's a real-world example involving decimals and swimming pools. My neighborhood swimming pool is 17 400 meters wide. It is divided into 8 lanes of equal width for swimming laps. How wide is each lane? Let's draw a picture to help us understand what the question is asking us to find. Here's my swimming pool, and there I am swimming. Now we know that the width is 17 400 meters. And we want to divide our pool into 8 lanes of equal parts. 6, 7, 8. Okay, I know they don't look equal, but it's hard to draw them equal, so I hope you can do a better job than I'm doing. Now, let's think about again what we're trying to do. If we want to divide our swimming pool into 8 lanes, that means that 8 is our divisor and 17 400 is our dividend. So let's go ahead and do that long division. Now, we won't worry about where the decimal needs to be placed yet in the quotient. We're going to do long division just like we do whole numbers. So let's do that first, and then we'll talk about where to place the decimal point. 8 times 2 is 16. 17 minus 16 is 1. Don't forget to bring down your 0. And then 8 times 1 is 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. Bring down the 4. 8 times 3 is 24. When we subtract these, we get a remainder of 0. Therefore, we're done. That's our quotient. Now, though, we need to talk about where the decimal belongs in our quotient, or the decimal point. Well, all you have to do is place the decimal point in the quotient directly above the decimal point in the dividend. So here's our decimal point in the dividend, and I'm just going to place it right there in the quotient. So our quotient is 2 13/100. Don't forget your units. Units are very important. We have 2 13/100 meters. So how wide is each lane? Each lane is 2 13/100 meters wide. Now, it's very important to think about whether your answer makes sense or not. Let's just say you happen to place a decimal point in the wrong place. And let's say you placed it here instead of here. And your answer was 21 3/10. If you got 21 3/10 meters, does that make sense? Well, look at this. The width of our pool is 17 400 meters. How can the length of each lane or each lap, how can that, or the width, how can that be greater than the total width of the swimming pool? It can't. That doesn't make sense. So this would not be our answer. So think about that when you're doing these problems, whether your answer makes sense or not. So decimals are great. We see them in all walks of life, including at our neighborhood pool. See you soon. Let's take a look at another real-world example where decimals and division come into play. Sadie spent $12.46 for songs that were on sale for 89 cents each. Our challenge is to find out how many songs Sadie downloaded. When we divide decimals, we need to make sure that the divisor is a whole number. If the divisor is not a whole number, we need to figure out what power of 10 we need to multiply the divisor by to make it a whole number. So let's figure out what our divisor is. Well, we have that the songs were on sale for 89 cents each. So in order to figure out how many songs Sadie downloaded, we need to divide 12 4600 by 8900. So here notice that our divisor is not a whole number. So what power of 10 do we need to multiply 8900 by to make it a whole number? If you said 100, you are correct. Now, 8900 times 100 is 89. So our divisor becomes 89. But whatever you do to the divisor, you must also do to the dividend. So let's multiply the dividend also by 100. And 12 and 46 hundredths times 100th is 1,246. And we're going to leave the decimal here just because it will tell us where it belongs in the quotient. Now let's go ahead and do the long division. 89 times 1 is 89. Make sure you line up your number in the right place. Now we have 124 minus 89. That gives us 35. Bring down the 6, and 89 times 4 is 356, which 356 minus 356 is 0. So our remainder is 0, and we're done with this long division. And don't forget your units. We had 14 songs. Songs were our units. So how many
many songs did Sadie download? 14 songs, since that was our quotient. Decimals are everywhere, as you can see, from money and currency to music and songs. Have fun enjoying decimals in your life, and I'll see you soon. We've seen how to multiply and divide rational numbers. Let's take a look at rational numbers in the real world with this fun application question about marathon runners. The total length of a marathon relay race is 26 2/10 miles. Each relay team has 4 runners, and each runner runs one of the 4 legs of the race. Juanita ran the first leg of the race, which was 1/4 of the total length. How many miles did Juanita run? Solve the question in 2 different ways. Now, before we start, I should tell you that sometimes you get these questions with a whole lot of information, and you don't always need all this information. So let's take a look at what we do need and what we don't need. Let's locate the question first. Here it is. How many miles did Juanita run? So that's what we need to know. How many miles did she run? Well, here we have that Juanita ran the first leg of the race, which was 1/4 of the total length. This gives us the information we need. Of course, it doesn't tell us the total length, but if you reread the question, you'll see that at the beginning it says the total length of a marathon relay race is 26 2/10 miles. So we need that information. So the rest, really, we don't need. It's just information they're giving us to trick us. So I'm going to cross it out just to remind myself that I will not be using that information. Now we're ready to look at the 2 methods we're going to use to tackle this exercise. Okay, we already said the question was how many miles did Juanita run? And Juanita ran 1/4 of the total length. Now the total length, if you recall, was 26 2/10 miles. And I'll place it right here to remind us that that's the total length. We're ready to set this up. Now, recall that in mathematics, of means multiplication. So we need to multiply 1/4 times the of 26 2/10 miles. There's different ways to do this, and we're going to see 2 methods right now. And one method is to change the fraction to a decimal, because we want just decimals when we're multiplying for this method. So we have 1/4 times 26 2/10, which was what we had set up. And 1/4 can be written as a decimal as 0 25/100. Here we have our new multiplication, which is equivalent to this one. Next, we can set our multiplication up, and if you take some time to do it and get the following, then you are correct. Here is our answer. So we have 6 55/100. Remember, we can drop that 0 because these 2 decimals are equivalent. 6 55/100 miles. Always write your units. And there you have it. Using decimals, we get that Juanita runs 66 55/100 miles. Next, let's use another method, and this time we're going to change the decimal to a fraction. So here is our method 2. So again, we have 1/4 times 26 2/10, which was what we had set up at the beginning. And 26 2/10 can be rewritten as a fraction, as 26 2/10. Now there we get a mixed number. For purposes of multiplying, we need to change that to an improper fraction. So now we have 262 tenths. And we want to make sure we always write it in the most simplest form. So now we have 131 fifths, which if we multiply that, we get 1 times 131 is 131, and 4 times 5 is 20. Now, when we're talking about specific situations, it's a little bit difficult to see how many miles that is. So we're going to change it into a mixed number. So here's my mixed number, 6 and 11/20. And again, let's not forget our units. So I'm just going to write it here. Oops. Still thinking about the decimals, but now we have fractions. I'm going to write it here so we don't forget that our units are miles. So we have that Juanita ran 6 and 11/20 miles. Now, just because we did it two different methods, that doesn't mean that these two answers are different. In fact, our two answers better be the same. Now, let's think about that for a second. Here we have 6 holes, and here we also have 6 holes. So it looks like we might be on the right track. Another way to make sure that these are equivalent is by you can perform long division on your 131 over 20. And if you perform the long division, you will see that you will get that decimal. And there you have it, 2 different methods to do the same exercise. Whoa, sometimes these real world questions are like marathons. Keep up the great work, and I'll see you next time. Rational numbers are everywhere, even in your favorite burger place. Let's take a look at a real-world situation using rational numbers and hamburgers. Elias mixes 2.5 pounds of ground beef and 3/4 pound of ground pork to make hamburger meat. How many 1/4 pound patties can Elias make with the hamburger meat? Let's first analyze our information. We have that Elias has 2.5 pounds of beef and 3/4 pound of pork. And he makes 1/4 pound patties. Let's also determine what our question is. Our question says, how many 1/4 pound patties can Elias make? Now let's go ahead and formulate a plan. And I'll write it here on the side. Well, if Elias has 2.5 pounds of beef and 3/4 pound pork, he's mixing it together to make this patty. So to mix it together, we need to add the pounds, and that'll give us the total number of pounds of meat that he has, regardless whether it's beef or pork. So we have 2.5 pounds of beef plus 3/4 pound of pork. But we're not done because this only gives us the amount of meat that he has. Remember, he makes 1/4 pound patties, and we want to know how many can he make. Well, in order to find out how many he can make, we need to divide 1/4. And now we're ready to do our operations. Now, there's a couple operations here, addition and division. So we have to remember that we need to do the order of operations. And since we have parentheses, we want to start with the parentheses. We're going to start with 2.5 plus 3/4. Now we have a mixed number and a fraction. So let's go ahead and change the mixed number into an improper fraction. So we have 5/2 plus 3/4. And let's just bring down everything else. Notice that our denominators are different, so we can't add the fractions. We need to find the common denominator. So the common denominator is 4, and if we multiply the 5/2 by 2 over 2, we get 10/4 plus 3/4. Now we're ready to add our fractions. 10 fourths plus 3 fourths gives us 13 fourths. And I don't have to write the parentheses anymore because I already did the operation inside those parentheses. And now we're ready to divide, which we know division turns into multiplication, and we want to write the reciprocal of the second fraction. Now let's go ahead and simplify this. Makes it a lot easier to multiply. So now we have, since these are the same, now we have 13 times 1 is 13, and 1 times 1 is 1. Now, that's not the most simplified form, so we want to just write 13. And there you have it. Elias can make 13 patties, and these patties are a quarter pound. Rational numbers, they're nutritious, delicious, and all around us. Have fun with your rational numbers, and I'll see you next time.